elaborate a little bit on what is this research colloquium about and how frequent does it actually happen. So again, welcome to our research colloquium, and it's organized by the Postgraduate Department of Engineering. So I suppose in our midst here, there are a group of students, not just from our engineering school, but comes from various faculties as well. So we are indeed glad to have our guest speaker, Dr. Raman Murugan. He's from India. I believe he's also currently in India. So before I pass the time to Dr. Murugan, welcome all. I hope you all will benefit greatly from this talk entitled Computer-Aided Diagnosis of Medical Images Using Deep Learning. So to engineering students, unfamiliar words, but maybe for those who are new, hope you have a deeper understanding as Dr. Murugan shares with us. Now, I'd just like to give you a brief introduction of Dr. Murugan. He has a bachelor's degree in electronics and communication, and also a master's degree in embedded system technologies. And he also gotten his PhD degree in the information and communication engineering, and he's from Anna University, Chennai in India. So Dr. Murugan has vast array of experience in lecturing. He has been a lecturer in the Ali Muhammad College of Engineering, the St. Peter's Engineering College, and now he is working and teaching and benefiting students in the National Institute of Technology in India as well. Dr. Murugan is a prolific researcher, a prolific writer as well. He has more than 70 research articles and is an active member in the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, so IEEE. Okay, so without further ado, I will just pass the time to Dr. Murugan, and after half an hour, we will take a break to receive some questions, and then we will resume with part 2, where Dr. Murugan will continue on, and we will end with a simple question and answer. So if you have any questions, you can continuously post on the chat box. We will record, and if there's an overwhelming one, we will select few. And if there's none, probably we're going to call names. Okay, we'll see how it goes. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kong Ming, for sharing. So we will now pass the time to Dr. Murugan to benefit us on this topic of deep learning. Okay, I pass the time to you, Dr. Murugan.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jonathan. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a nice introduction, Jonathan. Yeah. So let me share my screen before getting into the presentation. Yeah, I hope it is in that my screen is presented to you. Yes.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, very good afternoon, those who are connected in Malaysian time, and for others, maybe in Indian time, it is good, almost here also good afternoon. Yes. First of all, thank you very much for the UCB University for inviting me to given the opportunity to share my thoughts in this virtual platform. So today I'm going to present a topic on computer-aided diagnosis of medical images using deep learning. So I, like Dr. Jonathan has already highlighted my profile. So I belongs to the Biomedical Imaging Laboratory of the ECE Department of National Institute of Technology, Silchar, Assam, India. So like before getting into the today topic, I like to share some of the the historical information about the institutions, so that the participant they get some like idea, so where this institution is located and what they are doing, right? And this is my institutions where I have been working, like National Institute of Technology, Silchar. So it is one of the centrally funded institutes in the country, like in India. And in India, almost 31 national institutes are available in like total 31 NITs are available in the country. So NIT Silchar is one among in the NITs. And of course, this is a central government institutions under the Union Ministry of Higher Education, Government of India. Initially, this institute was started in the year 1967 as a regional engineering college in Silchar. So later, according to the Government of India NIT Act, it was upgraded into NIT. So NIT, this is one of the one of the top institutes in India for offering the postgraduate and the undergraduate and of course the PhD degree as well. And this institute is having lots of infrastructural facility for the betterment of student and the working community of this institution. And of course, this institute is ranked many, well in many ranking framework like NIRF and other ranking framework in the globe. So currently, this institute is headed by the director, Professor Sivaji Bandapodhyay. And you can see here in this pandemic time, it is very hard to visit these institutions for the betterment of the audience. So I have been like sharing the drone view of the whole NIT Silchar campus. You can see here the whole the drone view of the institution. You can see here this institute is like you can find everywhere the green and the natural green beauty of the Assam state in India. And the natural beauty, the natural calamities you can find everywhere in the institution. This institution having total 30 number of lakes inside the campus. So in between the lakes, the buildings were being constructed. You can see here the next image I like to show to you is that this is the central library of NIT Silchar campus. The main speciality of this library is that it is one of the largest digital library in South Asia. The name of the library is Bharat Ratna Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Learning Resource Center. Yeah. So next I like to share like the department, the department where I have been working. You can see here like the department is where I've been working is Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering. So basically this department is offering total 3 degrees. So here the first degree, the beginning, like the Bachelor of Technology and Engineering, and it is offering the Electronics and Communication Engineering program. And this department is also offered 2 postgraduate program in engineering. One is Communication and Signal Processing Engineering, and another one is Microelectronics and Very Large Scale Integration. And of course, the department is also offering the PhD degree in all the specializations of electronics and communications and the interdisciplinary degree as well. Like so, from this historical perspective, I am getting into the today topic of our discussions. So first, initially, I would like to share some of the basic information about the image, because as of the title concern, so we have like the deep medical images in terms of deep learning perspective, right? But I have prepared this whole presentation only for the general audience. Say because I don't have the target audience, whether it may be a postgraduate or it may be a doctorate or undergraduate. or faculty. That target audience I don't know. So that's why I have been prepared. This particular presentation is for the general audience. Okay. So once if you understand the generic framework and this whole concept or maybe the whole idea, you may be applied into any of the engineering discipline. So as far as the topic concerned, we'll start from the images. Let's see the image. Like, it is a very popular name, in everywhere, right? So it is very, play a very important role in our day-to-day activities, right? So you can see, like, after invention of the smartphone, at least one image we are taking, in a day, right? And you can see here the image, like we can capture, like, for the saving the memories, and of course for capturing the sceneries, and of course for taking the selfies and others, right? So the image is playing a role not only for this, but also the image is helping for the surveillance applications. Like, we can see everywhere we have the CCTV camera, right? So the surveillance also is one of the major applications of, like, the image, or we can say the image processing. And not only for these two, but also the image can help for the research purpose. Okay. So the research, it may be a computer vision research, or it may be a medical research, or of course in the medical image processing related researches, right? So this is, like, I would like to share with you, like, what is basically image, because I'm not going to present what is image processing, because I thought that you may be knowing this term and what is image processing. So from this introduction, actually I'm directly getting into the medical image processing, because the today topic is basically I have been presented based on the medical imaging perspective. Now let's coming into the next, the term which I like to share with you is like medical imaging. Okay. So now what is medical imaging? In a simple, in the layman language, we can define the medical imaging is nothing but it is the process or technique of creating the visual representation of the human body, and especially the interior of the human body. For what purpose? For it may be a clinical analysis, or it may be a medical intervention. Okay, clear? So let me share with one example so that the participants maybe understand even better. Suppose there is some pain in my hand, right? So what I have to do? So basically I have to be consult to the doctors. Okay, if the doctor can able to fix the issue, then there will be fine. Otherwise the doctor, they will be suggest to acquire the X-ray image, right? So here what they will do, with the help of the X-ray image, or maybe the help of the X-ray, the doctor can understand the visual representation of the body. Okay, so what happens inside? So if you consider this example, like, we can easy to understand what is medical imaging. It is a technique or process of creating the visual representation of the human body. Fine. So for what purpose? For it may be the clinical analysis, or it may be the medical interventions. Okay, sometimes this medical imaging also helping to progress the functions of organs or tissue in the human body. Okay, so this is the whole the definition of medical image, we can say. And this image can be processed for many applications, especially in the medical imaging domain. So that it is basically, we call it as medical image processing. Okay. So now in the medical image processing domain, or maybe in the medical image processing research, so basically the researcher has to do with only the medical images. So we have different types of medical images, like in the medicine framework. So these medical imaging are the types of medical images, we call it as modalities. So generally these are called medical imaging modalities. So if you visit any hospital or any radiological center, you can find these kind of medical imaging modality terms, because it is very common terms in all the hospitals and of course in the radiological centers. So if you consider the medical imaging modality, we have n number of medical imaging modalities are available, but in this particular slide I have been highlighted only the few medical imaging modalities, because the reason is that, so these are all the medical imaging modality, so majorly used by the researcher, or we can say that for the research purpose. So the scientists like students, or like the technologists like engineers like us, we are using this modality for the research purpose. Okay, so let me share some of the very fundamental perspective about all these medical imaging modality. Then I will getting into the specific medical imaging modality for presenting the technical presentation. So first let me consider the first modality, which is called radiology, or we can say the radiography. So this medical imaging modality, basically it is like a X-ray. Okay, so everybody's come across this X-ray medical imaging modality, because it is very one of the low-cost medical imaging modality, which is almost available in all the clinics and hospitals, and of course it is available in even in a small clinic also, right? So in general, the radiography, the X-ray that can be used for some fluoroscopy and mammography and much more. And the next very important medical imaging modality is that computed tomography. We simply call it as CT, right? So this is also the commonly available medical imaging modality in all the hospitals, which is almost similar to the X-ray machine. But the main difference between the X-ray and the CT is that the X-ray machine or the X-ray image can be acquired in only one direction, but in the CT we can acquire in the multi directions. Okay, so the CT will be available in 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional as well. Okay, so this is the main difference from the X-ray and the CT. And next, if you look into the next 3 medical imaging modality, which is nuclear medicine imaging and single photon emission computed tomography and the positron emission tomography. So these 3 medical imaging modalities are very rarely suggested by the doctors, because these medical imaging modalities are suggested until suggested only for the emergency case, until it is necessary. So these medical imaging modality penetrate the gamma rays and the photon rays and positron to the human body. So these medical imaging modality basically suggested by the clinicians only for some the tumor cases and the cancer cases, for screening the patients, that these kind of modalities are generally suggested by the doctors. And after these 3 set of modality, if you look into the next modality, which is called MRI. If you see the MRI imaging modality, the magnetic resonance imaging, so this is basically can help to acquire any part of the human body in almost in 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional, and now we have 4-dimensional pictures can also acquire with the help of MRI machines. So you can heard about the fMRI, like functional MRI. So that kind of advanced technology also available in the radiological centers. And mainly you can see here this MRI machine, we can acquire the brain image, most importantly in many applications. And next, if you look into the another 2 set of medical imaging modality, say for example ultrasound imaging and the Doppler ultrasound imaging. This is simply the ultrasound imaging modality. This is a very low cost medical imaging modality, because this is available even in conventional all the hospitals. So these modalities basically we can use to analyze the movement of the fetal in the pregnant woman, and of course we can use this modality for screening the kidney stone and such kind of applications. And next is that the last two set of medical imaging modality are very special, because the reason is that these two imaging modalities are helping to acquire the retinal image in the human eye. Okay, so the first one is the fundus imaging and another one is the optical coherence tomography. So these two medical imaging modalities are helping to acquire the fundus, like the retinal image, but the difference with one another is that the fundus imaging we can acquire in 2-dimensional, and the optical coherence tomography we can acquire the 3-dimensional images. So these are all the two main difference between the last two medical imaging modality. Now, as the part of my research career, I have been working in almost the major medical imaging modality, which I have been listed in this particular slide. But this presentation, I'm going to present mainly on fundus imaging modality, because the fundus imaging modality is one of my main research area, and of course I have been working this fundus imaging modality in the last 1 decade. So the whole presentations will be getting into the fundus imaging. Now let me go into the very in detail, like a retinal fundus imaging. So basically, what is this retinal fundus imaging? So in general, it is very simple. Like the retinal fundus imaging is nothing but it is one of the medical imaging modality, can help to the fundus image, or we can say the fundus camera can help to acquire the retina from the human eye. Okay, say for example, with the help of the conventional camera, acquiring the retina is a quite challenging job. Okay, so that's why we need some specialized camera to acquire the retinal image, right? So basically the fundus image, the fundus camera is helping to acquire the retina. That's why the whole imaging is called retinal fundus imaging. Now let me getting into the very detail in this particular medical imaging modality. Initially in the biological perspective, then we'll getting into the research perspective. Now suppose like in the biological perspective, or any researcher or any new researcher, if you want to getting into the research in the fundus imaging modality, basically you have to be very clear about the biological structure of the retina. Then only you can able to identify the research problem to carry out in your research. So let me see the anatomy of the eye. So everybody's come across this anatomy. We have been known this anatomy from our childhood itself. And the main point I like to focus to you is that you can see here the eye. The front side we have a cornea, iris, and of course we have the eye lens here. And in the back side of the eye we have the retina. You can see here the retina is like the light reddish part. So this is the retinal portion in the eye. You can see here the retina is located almost the back side of the human eye. You can see here. So with the help of the conventional camera, capturing this retinal structure is quite difficult. That's why we need some specialized camera for that. Like now the next slide, I like to show you the closest view of the retina that has been captured with the help of the fundus camera. You can see here, this is the closest view of the retina. The retina consists of 3 parts. Basically, the first part is called macula. It is the center part of the retina, and the next, the brightest part in the retina is called optic nerve head, or we can call it as optic disc, right? And the third major part of the retina is that you can able to see lots of vessels, the nerves it's going toward is from the retina. These vessels is called blood vessels. Okay, so generally the retina consists of three major parts. One is macula, and another one is optic disc or optic nerve head, and third one is the blood vessels. So why I am highlighting this biological structure? The reason is that if you know the biological structure, then only you can able to understand the research perspective, what is the actual problem in this, like the small retinal image. Now you can see here, this is a typical fundus camera which will be available in the eye hospitals or maybe the ophthalmology department of any hospitals. You can see here, this is the typical fundus camera. So that fundus camera, so the front portion we have a screen and we have the aperture selector, and the clinicians or the radiologists, they will be sitting front side of the machine, and the patients, they will be sitting opposite to the machine. And here you can see here, with the help of the aperture selector, the light will be penetrated to the human eye. So eye is having the lens, so it, like if the light is penetrating, then automatically it will be back scattered. So from the back scattering effect, the retina has been captured with the help of the condensing lens of the fundus camera. Then finally this captured fundus image or the captured retinal image, it will be processed by the computer with the help of the specialized software for the editing, like the cropping and other kind of applications. Then finally the retinal image has been captured with the help of this particular camera. So this is the typical fundus camera which will be available in hospitals. Okay, so with the help of this fundus image or with the help of this retinal fundus image, we have n number of applications. Like say, so in general, this fundus image can help to find out what are the retinal diseases that happen for the human. And if the human is having any retinal diseases or any eye diseases, so that has been screened or that has been progressed with the help of this fundus photography. So say for example, in everywhere, if you visit any hospital or any eye hospital, you can able to find these kind of diseases. Like you can able to see the glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration. So these are all the well-known eye diseases that will be creating for the human, and these diseases are screening by the eye doctor with the help of this fundus photography. So these are all the main applications of this particular like the retinal fundus images. Now in the next in the slide, I like to share some of the eye diseases that has been reported for the human. So as of my knowledge and based on the literature, there are 62 different kind of eye diseases are creating in the human eye. And I have been given like some of the eye diseases in this particular slide. And in this list, some of the diseases I have been highlighted in red color. You can see here. The first one, you can see the age-related macular degeneration. Simply, it is called as AMD. And another disease is called cataract. And the next disease which I have been highlighted, diabetic eye disease, or it is called diabetic retinopathy. And another very dangerous disease is called retinitis pigmentosa, and finally glaucoma. So these highlighted diseases are called most degenerative diseases for the human. Okay, so that's why I've been highlighted these diseases in this particular slide. And so next part of my presentation, I like to share what are the disease indication or the symptoms indication of these 5 most degenerative diseases. So then only the participant can benefit so what is the problem actually happen in this particular diseases, and how the technologies we can able to contribute or we can able to do research with these particular retinal images. So in that case, first letting into the first disease, The retinal disease is called cataract. This is the common eye diseases. I think everybody's come across this particular disease. And the main symptoms of this disease is like the white color bubble that will be created in the eye lens. Like this is the first clinical symptoms of the cataract. And you can see here the vision changes of the normal and the cataract like vision. So the cataract vision, you can see like it will be blurred from the normal vision. And next you can see here which is called age-related macular degeneration. Like in the biological perspective, we haven't seen the macula, right? In the retina, I told you, like the retina consists of blood, macula, and blood vessels and the optic disc, right? So the macula is the center part of the retina. In generally, for the elderly people, those who are obtained, reach the age like 50 and 55, and in that age, what happens is that the center part of, or we can say the macula part, is getting affected. Okay, so that's why the name of the disease, which is called age-related. So this will be affected by the elderly people, and macular. So it will be affected by the macula. So it's a degenerative disease. That's why the whole name of the disease is called age-related macular degeneration. Okay, and you can see here the normal vision changes, like the general vision change from the normal vision. So if you're having the AMD, the central part of the vision that has been affected, and the background vision you can able to see that. Okay, so this is the like the imaging changes of the age-related macular degeneration. And the next I like to show you the next degenerative disease, which is called glaucoma. Right? So the glaucoma is second largest vision loss disease in the world. Okay, and majority of the human population that has been affected by this particular disease. Okay, so you can see here the glaucoma disease. It is just opposite to the AMD, because in AMD they lost the central vision, but in glaucoma the central vision we can able to see, but the background vision is totally has been lost. Okay, and basically this glaucoma disease that will be affected by, like, based on the eye pressure. Okay, suppose like a human blood pressure, the eye is also having some kind of pressures. Okay, like suppose if you are not properly like slept in the night, and the next day you will get the, like, your eye may be under pressure. How to know the symptoms of the eye pressure? If you see, if your eye liquid is come out from your eye, then that is the first symptom. So your eye is under pressure. Suppose if you are working a late night with your in your office, or maybe from with your computer in home, what happened? So if you are not properly slept in the night, the next day you can find the eye liquid come out from the eye, right? So that is the symptoms, like your eye is under pressure. So if this condition is keep on continuing, what happens? It will leads to the disease which is called glaucoma. Okay. So if you see, the most of the IT engineers, the IT people are affected by this kind of diseases, because they are spending almost more than 12 to 15 hours per day with computer and without a proper sleeping. So like that's why the majority of IT engineers are affecting this kind of diseases. Like, I'm not saying, the statistics is saying like this. Okay, and so this is the historical, like, the perspective of the glaucoma disease. And the next one is that the retinitis pigmentosa disease. So this is also one of the dangerous disease. So this disease, basically it will transfer from gene to gene. Suppose the parents is having this kind of disease, and of course the child is also having a chance to affect these kind of diseases. And you can see here, if the patient is having the person is having this disease, retinitis pigmentosa, you can see here only the small portion of the vision you can able to see, and the whole background vision can be getting the lost. Okay, So, and even the retinitis pigmentosa patient, they can't able to see in the, especially in the night vision. Okay, that is like the problem of this patient. That these are the problem facing by these retinitis pigmentosa patients. And you can see here the imaging changes, and the whole retina that will be occupying by the block patches. So this is like, that's why the vision is looking the whole block in the image, right? And the next disease, we can see the last disease of this degenerative is called diabetic retinopathy. So this diabetic retinopathy disease, it is one of the world largest vision loss disease, and this particular disease is affected by the diabetes mellitus people, and those who are having the diabetes, of course, they may be having a chance for affecting this particular disease. And you can see here, there is no discrimination to affect the vision. It may be affecting any part of the eye, either it may be a center vision or maybe a background or foreground or anything. Okay, so that's why this is a very dangerous disease in the world. And of course, the developing countries like India and other US and other Asian countries, so we have large number of diabetes patients, and of course they having a chance to affect the diabetic retinopathy diseases. Okay, so now what I have been highlighted in the first part of the lecture, the first part of the presentation, the whole the biological perspective of the retina, and of course the some of the major degenerative disease that has been appeared in the retina. So the next part of the lecture, I would like to share, I'm going to present the whole the research and of course the biological perspective of the diabetic retinopathy disease, because the eye is having n number of diseases, like you can say the glaucoma, AMD, and the cataract, and of course the diabetic retinopathy. So screening these kind of diseases in hospital, that will be the only the possibility for identifying whether the patient is having these kind of diseases or not. But the reason why we are focusing doing the research in this area is that, so many countries, we have large number of diabetes patients, so the doctors are suggesting that every diabetes patients, so they have to be screen the eye at least 6 months once, otherwise they may be affected this kind of disease, especially for the diabetic retinopathy. Okay, so if you see in many developing countries, the number of eye doctors or the number of ophthalmologists are very, very less, right? So the patient, they have to be spend more amount, as well as they have to be wait for the time in a queue for screening their eye, right? So that's why the researchers or the technologists like us, we are doing the automated or we can say the computer aided diagnosis of this whole retinal diseases. Okay, either it can be AMD, glaucoma, or diabetic retinopathy, or retinitis pigmentosa, or anything. Okay, so for continuing the further time, you can see I'm highlighting the major biological perspective of diabetic retinopathy. I'm going to be present, and now we can see here in this particular slide, I like to differentiate the healthy eye and the diabetic eye. You can see, because we know the biological perspective of the retina, and now we can easy to differentiate the healthy eye and the diabetic eye. You can see here in the healthy eye, we don't have any other retinal features. You can see here only the retina, fovea, optic disc are there. And if you look into the diabetic eye, we have other features. Okay, so these features, in every feature they have the name. So the first one is that the small red particle, which is called aneurysm. So this is called like in the exact name of the aneurysm, which is called microaneurysm, because it is small in size. Okay, and if the like microaneurysm is getting enlarged from the retina, it maybe call it as hemorrhages, and of course in the exudates. And we have the other retinal features we can call the cotton wool spots. It is like a light yellowish spot, and in general case, in the healthy eye, the blood vessels are continuous in nature, and once the like patient is affected by the diabetic retinopathy, what happens is that the blood vessels may be break from anywhere. That's called abnormal blood vessels. Okay, so these are all the some of the retinal like features for the diabetic eye case, because the diabetic retinopathy that has been like screened based on these retinal features, or we can say the retinal symptoms are okay. And that this is the like the point which I have been highlighted to you with the help of this slide. And next, I like to share in terms of diabetic retinopathy case, or in the diabetic retinopathy disease perspective. In general, the diabetic retinopathy disease is divided into two major types. One is NPDR and another one is PDR. What is NPDR? It is nothing but mild non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and another one is PDR, which is called proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Okay, so how these retinopathy stages are classified based on the retinal symptoms or based on the retinal features. You can see here, if the patient or the people, they don't have any abnormality, of course the eye has been quite normal. And if the eye is having the microaneurysm, and which is comes under mild NPDR, okay, and that's why the microaneurysm feature, which is generally called it as, it is the first clinical symptoms of diabetic retinopathy. Okay, and you can see here, like based on the other feature, the retinopathy can be classified into mild, moderate, and severe. Okay, so this is the general international severity scale for screening the diabetic retinopathy disease. Okay, and so this is the whole biological thing which have been learned from the diabetic retinopathy diseases. So once if you understand all this biological perspective, then it is very easy to concentrate on the research framework. So now let me go one more like fundamental about this diabetic retinopathy. So based on the feature, you can see the color changes of the retina, and if they're having the, if the patient is having to identify in the first, second, third cases, and we have the treatment is available in hospital, we have the laser treatment that will be possible to screen. But if it is reached to the fourth stage, it is very hard to treat this particular disease. The patient has to lose their vision. Okay, and this is the effect of the whole retina. And now coming into the research perspective, like how to diagnose these diseases with automatically with the help of computer. Okay, so in that case, as a researcher, like quite the large number of research that has been undertaken in this particular area before the invention of the deep learning and machine learning algorithms. Okay, so how in image processing perspective we call it as, these are all conventional image processing steps, or we can say the conventional image processing algorithm that has been developed for screening these diseases. Okay, but after the invention, like quite popular in the machine learning and deep learning algorithm, the same conventional image processing that has been replaced in every aspect with the help of the deep learning algorithm. So now, first part of the discussion in the research discussion, I like to share how these diseases, and especially for the diabetic retinopathy, is able to screen or diagnosis with the help of the conventional image processing. Then I will getting into the deep learning perspective. Okay, let me see with the help of the conventional image processing, we can use like our all these conventional image processing algorithm. Like like pre-processing, segmentation, feature extraction, and the feature selection. And finally, we have to classify the image with the help of the ground truth that has been collected from the clinicians. Like, so the major challenge in this conventional image processing is that ground truth. Okay, and of course the collection of the retinal images. Okay, so if you're having these two, then it is very easy to develop the computer, like our own conventional image processing based diagnosis algorithm. Now, in my research area, is main research area is like retinal image analysis, and of course all my research groups are working, are doing research in both the ways, like in conventional image processing and as well as machine learning and deep learning based studies. Okay, now first I like to share some of the conventional image processing work which has been undertaken, and of course these works are you can able to find in my Google Scholar, but I'm just quickly rush up these conventional image processing algorithm, so that's why the audience can be benefited. So how we can able to do these kind of algorithms for any other diseases or maybe for other like the medical diseases. Like you can see here, initially we have been concentrated on localization of microaneurysms in retinal fundus images. So why we are doing the localization of microaneurysms? The reason is that, as I told you, based on the international severity scale, the microaneurysm is the first clinical symptoms of diabetic retinopathy. That's why if you can able to find the microaneurysms first, then the diabetic retinopathy can able to find in the early stage itself. So that is the main outcome of this particular research. You can see here, so these are all the steps or workflow that has been undertaken for detecting the microaneurysms from the retinal fundus image. So it's from starting from the pre-processing, segmentation and feature extraction, and finally the microaneurysm localizations. So I have been given only the workflow in this slide. I'm not highlighting any mathematical framework here. Suppose if I'm presenting the mathematical framework, so the whole discussion will be, will be like both technical, right? So if you want, if you interest to learn those mathematical framework, you can just learn this, download and just read the paper. Then you can able to get all the informations about the the step-by-step implementation of this whole paper, right? And you can see here, this is the step-by-step outcome of the work, and you can see here, these are some of the output screenshot also which have been given in this particular slide. Let me see the first image, the A image. Only like 1 or 2 microaneurysms are there. So it means that it is the the stage is in first one, mild, and based on the microaneurysms count, and we can able to see, and we can able to verify in which stage under. So here what happened, the initial part, the microaneurysm detection, we are doing the conventional image processing for detecting the microaneurysms. Then what we can able to do, so with the help of after extracting the feature of microaneurysm, then it will be processed into the any like automated classification algorithm, or maybe a machine learning or deep learning or anything. Then we can easy to automatically classify those diseases. Okay, and so for this work we have been used the 3 online data set which will be publicly available online, namely Drive, Stare and DirectV0. And you can see here this proposed methodology is outperforming well in all the 3 data sets in terms of ROC curve. Okay, so this is the one work which I have been highlighted to you, and second work which which is based on the conventional image processing is that retinal blood vessel segmentation using expected maximization algorithm. You can see here I have been derived the expected maximization algorithm for detecting the blood vessel. Because why we are detecting the blood vessel, as I told you, in general case the blood vessels are in continuous in nature, but in diabetic retinopathy case, if it is the blood vessels will be breaking in somewhere. Okay, so that's why this particular algorithm can help you to find out, whether if any breakage is there or not. And we can see here, this is the whole workflow of the work which have been used, which have been proposed. And the work start with the green component and the grayscale extractions. And in the green component extraction, we have been used all the conventional image processing. And of course, in the grayscale also, the whole conventional image processing steps. Then finally, remove the border, then finally the blood vessels have been segmented. So you can able to see the whole mathematical framework in the paper, and you can see here this is the step-by-step output of this whole work. And here we can closely see this particular slide. So the algorithm can effectively detect the blood vessels from the retinal fundus image, and you can see here the first image almost the blood vessels is nowhere it is breaking. So in that case, it's a normal one. And you can see here in the second one, you have a lot of breakages. Like, so here also we have so many like blood vessels are breaking then and there. So it means that it is the abnormal blood vessels. Okay, and with the help of this feature, as a researcher, we can do any kind of machine learning algorithm to automatically classify the diseases. Okay, so these are all the some of the conventional image processing works which I have been highlighted to you for these presentations. But my research group is working so many conventional image processing algorithm that we can able to find in the our Google Scholar page. So like up to now, I have been completed the conventional image processing part. Then in the further talk, I am going to present the whole deep learning framework for the diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy. Okay, so as a part of the first discussion or the first presentations, as Dr. Jonathan has said that if you have any queries, you can feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer some questions before getting into the deep learning research-based study. Okay, yeah. So Dr. Jonathan, it is fine. The first half, it will be fine too.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Murugan. It's actually very good to understand the fundamental biological aspect of eye problem. Actually, me myself, I have a genetic inheritance of eye issue. My grandfather has glaucoma, and he was blind for at least 5 years of his final days. So we know how devastating to actually lose both your sights. And yes, diabetic is part of it. And so my whole family has this problem. So they either have gone through surgery, laser surgery, to patch up the retina, glaucoma also to remove a layer of the cornea. Yeah, so a lot of things, if can be screened early, it's going to be very, very useful. Now, we want to open up for questions. Okay, perhaps while waiting for some question, maybe I just ask one or two out of my own curiosity. Yeah, number one, you mentioned that you are using this fundus machine. Okay, yeah, as I know, fundus machine, optician also use it. Now, so maybe can you maybe on the fundamental side of how normal diagnosis is done by doctors? What is the difference between ophthalmologist and an optician? Okay, so that would be my first question, and maybe a second question attaching to it would be what are signs? How do we personally, without the help of machine learning, help be cautious of how our eye health has started to deteriorate? Yeah, before we move into the technical part of machine learning, maybe you can help us to somewhat understand uh, in a more layman terms, like I can do it every day to at least ensure, oh, if this happen, then I need to see either ophthalmologist or seek help from doctors. So number one, the difference between optician and ophthalmologist. The second one, simple advice for students for eye care.
Yeah, yeah, nice questions, Dr. Jonathan. So I hope this presentation is very much, helpful, because you are personally, experience all these eye diseases in your family itself. Yes. So, so let me answer your first question. So you want to know the difference between the ophthalmologist and what is the second term which has been pronounced? Actually, I'm not getting the second term. What you have said.
The second one is the optician. Optician, the one who help us make our glasses.
Yeah. Now I got it. Yes. So it's a good question. Say the ophthalmologist. The first term I would like to highlight to you. The ophthalmologist is nothing but eye doctors. Okay. In general, the eye doctors are called it as ophthalmologist. Okay. So the ophthalmologist can able to do like in both the process. Say for example, in optometry as well as the biological eye. Like let's say if you are wearing the specs and they are doing the long sight and short sight, so that kind of things, it is a preliminary eye testing that has been done by the ophthalmologist or an eye doctor. So let me briefly explain in the optometry part. So how the eye doctors, the ophthalmologists are screening this optometry part. So they have the very famous test which is called, like the name of the test, visual activity test. Like everybody's come across this particular test. Suppose if you have some problem in your eye, generally if you are going to consult the doctor, in every eye hospital you can able to find the small board which has been displayed nearby the doctor's room. So there in the screen there will be couple of some numerical letters, some alphabetical letters in different size. It will be there, right? So the doctor they will suggest are the people they will be asked to test your vision. Like you can close your first eye, then they can ask to identify the color or what is the letter or what is the numeral, and like this is one kind of the manual test which is called activity test for identifying your optometry, I mean the vision. Okay, so this is basically optometry. So all these kind of long sight, short sight, so these are all doing only with the help of that kind of visual activity test. But if you looking into the vision, say if you have any diseases, especially eye diseases, and those eye diseases which is basically screened with the help of only the fundus camera. We have different types of fundus cameras are available in the market. Okay, different manufacturers are available. So with the help of those particular camera, like with the help of those images, the exact eye diseases can able to find out. But with the help of optometry, we can't able to identify any eye diseases. Rather, so the the fundus camera can able to identify the diseases. I hope I'm answering your first question. I hope so.
Thank you. Yeah.
What will be the second question?
Let me see if there's any questions from the students. Okay, yeah. My second question was, how do we, what advice would you simply give to students when to start to consult? Yeah, like these few days, I'm having some great eye, like I'm not sure.
Yes.
When do we need to be concerned?
Yes, exactly. See here, what happened, because now everywhere everyone is connected through online, right? Because of the pandemic, like in all the teachers like you, me, and almost our students are facing these kind of problems, right? Because now they are spending more time with computer, not only for doing the simulation and but also for learning the classes also, right? Yeah. So this is a very interesting question. So as a researcher, I can able to suggest some of the points to you is that uh, like uh, for the perfect vision, what doctors are suggesting, like minimum 6 to 8 hours, the rest is compulsory required. Okay, so if you are looking more time with computer monitor, what happens is that your eye will be in under pressure, and of course it will lead to the eye diseases. That is a one advice from my side. And second advice is that don't spend or don't look the computer monitor or any display devices in the night vision or in the night time. Okay, so that is very very dangerous, because our background is also dark, and if you see our computer monitor, of course your eye or the vision is glaring, like affected day by day. Okay, so better you can spend more with the daytime, so night time you can take relax with like you just shut from the computer or any display devices. And of course the third advice is the common advice: before going into the bed, don't look any mobile or any screen before the 30 minutes to 1 hour. Especially don't look just TV, and just don't close your eyes. What happens is that once if you are watching the TV, or if you're looking any the display devices like before your bed, what happens is that the whole rays that will be automatically captured from your nerve, so automatically, so you will not get the proper sleep in the night. Okay, and of course always the image will be showcasing in your nerve head. Automatically you will be getting disturbance for the, especially in the sleeping time. Okay, so better before going into the bed, just shut down all the things, just relax and talk with your neighbor for an hour, or in 30 minutes, and go to your sleep. So this is also can help you to get the good sleep, and of course it will help for the good vision and lifelong.
Thank you, Dr. Murugan. Yeah. I'm afraid in order to meet our neighbor, we also need to go online during this time.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much. Perhaps we can proceed to the second part of your lecture.
Yeah.
And we will ask more questions at the end.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Murugan. Back to you.
Okay, so welcome back. The second part of my lecture. So my second part of the lecture will be very short. The reason is that, so I have been already presented the whole biological and theoretical perspective of my talk. So from this point onwards, of course, the process is very very simple, because we are going to use deep learning, right? Because the deep learning is also helping to us almost how much is it is simply it is possible, right? Now coming to the point, how we can do these diagnosis with the help of deep learning algorithm. Like in conventional image processing algorithm, the major challenge is that, so we have to do the process manually, right? But if you use any deep learning algorithm, our whole manual process is getting very very simplified, and everything it will be getting automated. Yeah. So now for doing the computer aided diagnosis with the help of the deep learning, basically we have to face the two challenges. The first challenge is that we need the huge amount of data. Okay, suppose if you want to work with the diabetic retinopathy disease or any other stages, if you want to classify or if you want to diagnose this with the help of the deep learning, we need to collect huge amount of images from the hospitals, or it may be from any other online data sets, right? So that is the first challenge. And second challenge is that for developing any deep learning architecture or developing any deep learning algorithm, we need the large computational facilities. Say we need the workstations or GPU with like some good graphics card. Then only our processing time or our computational time will be very less. Okay, so these are all the two challenges basically we have to address before getting into the deep learning studies. Okay, now let me explain the general schematic of computer-aided diagnosis using deep learning in the diabetic retinopathy background. So initially what we have to do, first we have to set up the data set which consists of the different stages of diabetic retinopathy image. And what we have to do after that, we have to develop the own deep learning algorithm. Okay, or we have to set up the deep learning architecture. Okay, so as we know, the general architecture of the deep learning algorithm, which consists of convolutional layer and the polling layer and the fully connected layer, and finally the classification layer. Okay, so once we have the image, we have to develop our own architecture. Then once our architecture is developed, then we have to train the architecture with the data set. So once the architecture has been trained, then we can then next we have to test the architecture with the other set of images. Then finally it will be classified. Okay, so this is the whole step-by-step procedure of the diabetic retinopathy disease using deep learning. Now, as many researchers universally working with all these machine learning and deep learning algorithm, so this particular slide I have been highlighted or given only for the general audience, those who don't know the difference between and the machine learning. So for them I have been given this particular slide. Let me see. Already machine learning is there. Why people are talking about always the deep learning? So the reason is that if you consider the machine learning algorithm, so in a machine learning algorithm, suppose if you have the image, input image, which is like a car. Suppose if you want to identify whether it is a car or not a car, how to do that? First, we have to identify the feature manually in machine learning perspective. Then the identified feature that will be imported into the neural network, then it will be classified. So here in the machine learning, we are doing the feature extraction process manually. But if you look into the deep learning, the same car here we are not doing any manual feature extraction. Rather, the deep learning algorithm or architecture itself, it will extract the whole feature from the image automatically. Then finally, the architecture can classify whether it is a car or not a car. Okay, so this is the major difference between the machine learning and the deep learning. And in the machine learning, we have some of the drawback. The reason is that we are extracting the feature manually, and there may be a chance to miss some feature, right? But in deep learning, will never happen these kind of issues. So that's why the deep learning algorithms are quite popular in all the domain of research. Okay, so how these deep learning algorithms are working? With the help of the brain-inspired learning. Let's say, for example, if you want to define, or if you want some statement, some definition, from your one textbook. Suppose what happened? The level of accuracy will be less if you learn the definition from one textbook. Suppose the same definition, if you are learning from the 10 different textbooks, or maybe the 100 different textbooks, what happened? Our level of understanding will be better than the original. This is called brain-inspired learning. So the whole deep neural network are working based on this brain-inspired learning, right? And now the next I would like to highlight the very famous and the widely used deep learning algorithm, which is called convolutional neural network. So this convolutional neural network, as you know, simply we call it as CNN, and it may be used for any applications, and which includes the diabetic retinopathy like classification. Okay, so the convolutional neural network, which consists of like input layer, hidden layer, and the classification layer. So the hidden layer consists of convolution layer and the polling layer. Okay, and the classification layer, we have fully connected layer with softmax function. Okay, so this is the whole architecture of the CNN, and how the features are extracted in the hidden layer of CNN based on the number of layer which have been selected. Like, so this is the whole architecture of the CNN. And if you look into the very close into the hidden layer of the CNN, basically the convolution layer that has been performed the process of convolution. Okay, which we know the basics about the convolution process. For performing the convolutions with the image, normally the input image is represented as the matrix, and we have to convolve this input image with our filter. Either it may be a 2x2, 3x3, that is depends upon the our own decision, and it will be convolved with the input matrix. Then we'll get the convolution outputs. Okay, and next what we have to do, once the convolution has been done, then next we'll go for the polling layer. Okay, we can do with either max polling layer or the average polling layer. That is depends on the applications. But in majority of the medical imaging applications, so we have been used the max polling operations because the medical imaging research, always they are looking the high resolution image. If you select the maximum polling, of course it will be helpful for the good resolution. And if you see in this particular slide, in the first map, in the feature map, we have some 4x4 map. And first, if you consider the 2x2 filter, here we have 6, 4, and 5, 4. If you are applying the max polling, so what is the maximum pixel in this? 6 is the maximum pole. So in the max polling, so first place we will get the 6 pixel. So this process will repeated until the image. Then of course we'll get the polling function. Okay, and once if you process these convolution and the polling operations, so generally in a CNN we have to select the couple of convolution and the polling layer to extract the whole feature from the images. Okay, in general in CNN these features we point out with the help of the level of feature. Suppose if you are selecting the number of convolution and polling layers are less, then it will be the low level feature, and accordingly we can say the mid level feature and the high level feature. Okay, then finally the CNN will be a trainable classifier. So what happens is that if you use the number of layers or more, of course you can able to extract the level of feature up to the end, which means that the high level feature. And you can see here the whole the representation of the deep learning process. Suppose if you want to train the retinal image from the database, and you have to be select as many number of hidden layer in the neuron. So based on that, we can extract low level, mid level, and high level feature. Finally, we'll get the output. Okay, so this is the whole representation of the deep learning process. Okay, so now coming to the research perspective. So before that, in the deep learning perspective, I have been highlighted what is deep learning and what is brain inspired learning and what is CNN, what is the architecture and all. Okay, and so now coming into the research perspective, in my research group, we are actively participated in many computer aided diagnosis system with the help of this deep learning architecture. Which one among is that classifications of diabetic retinopathy with the normal image. Okay, so here what happened, we have been used to the CNN architecture for training the network, so to train the image, and once the image has been trained, then what happens is that then we can easy to test whether the image is coming the normal or in the diabetic retinopathy cases. Okay, so this is the work which has been like one of the work which is recently like published, and here the main beauty of this particular work is that like we have been trained this particular architecture with a different set of images. Say we have been used two online data set, and of course we have been collected the real-time images that has been acquired from the eye hospitals, and also we have been used our own like pre-processing, and we have been like trained the image, and that's why you can see here a different set of image in color and other things, but our developed architecture is performing better in all the cases. Okay, and this is one work like I'm just for the presentation purpose which I have been highlighted. Apart from that, we have n number of deep learning medical imaging diagnosis work. You can able to find it in the Google Scholar. So to move further for the presentations, as a researcher, we have to face a lot of challenges, especially in the medical image analysis using deep learning. So that I also highlighted in the initial time of the second part of the discussions. But majorly, the deep learning researchers in terms of medical research, we have been faced a couple of challenges, which one among is the data collection, right? So as I highlighted, collection of data in medical domain is quite difficult, and we need lots of patients to collect the image from the hospitals. And next is that the model selection. Model selection means that in the presentation, this like I just highlighted the CNN architecture, but apart from that, in the deep learning framework, we have n number of pre-trained networks. Say for example, ResNet, GoogleNet, DenseNet. So many networks are available, and nowadays people are developing some lightweight CNN and lightweight pre-trained networks. Like so many networks are available. So here what happens is that for the again coming to the deep learning researcher, which model has been performed better? Okay, that is also one of the common challenges in the deep learning research. Then the third one is that, of course, the result interpretations. Whenever we are doing any medical research, of course, like the decision is the best decision that will be given by the doctors, right? But of course, we need to like evaluate the result with the human. Okay, so this is also like the challenges of the medical images, right? Now you can see for the general audience, I have been given for other pre-trained network, like the pre-trained convolutional neural network, like AlexNet, GoogleNet, BGG, Inception, ResNet, SkewsNet. More pre-trained networks also available, and you can use any tools, simulation tools for running or developing this architecture, whether it may be a MATLAB or maybe you can use the Python or PyTorch, like Anaconda library that will be very famous. Everybody knows that. But apart from this, you can use the TensorFlow. That is also very famous for implementing these deep learning architectures. Okay, and you can use any type of architectures for automatic diagnosis of any medical research. Okay, now coming to the very interesting, like part of my talk, like everybody is using deep learning, right? But as a researcher, we have to use some of the novel deep learning, the novel methodology, right? So here what happens is that recently we have been used some novel training methods in deep learning network. Say for example, transfer learning, extreme learning, and the optimized learning. So these learnings also very popular in the deep learning research, and these training method we have been used. We have recently for the COVID-19 disease diagnosis, and the first one we have been developed the architecture which is called eDicoNet, that is extreme learning machine based classifier for the diagnosis of COVID-19 using the CNN. And you can see here we have been used the like ELM for the diagnosis for the same. Okay, and because of course in the deep learning everyone is using, but we have to differentiate from one, right? And with the unique, the novel ideas. So this is the one, and another one we have been used this the optimization algorithms for fine-tuning the hyperparameter of the CNN network. Okay, so that we have been used the Gray-Wolf optimization algorithm. So with the CNN, and of course this architecture we have been named OptCoNet for the diagnosis of COVID-19. So here what you can do, you can use some other training network, or you can use some other optimization algorithm, and you can use for any disease, of course, what disease you have been working in your research. And of course, I have been recently used the GYAN, the Generative Adversarial Network. As you know, this network has been developed, the very famous Google researcher, Ian Goodfellow. So he has been developed the GYAN, the Generative Adversarial Network. We also used GYAN network for data augmentation purpose, because initially when the pandemic started in the November 2019, so the number of images is very, very less for doing the research. Okay, so with the help of this generative adversarial network, we have been developed, like augmented, generated more number of CT images. Then finally, we have been used the optimization techniques for training the hyperparameter of the network, the ResNet 50 pre-trained network. Then finally, we have been classified whether the CT images from the normal case, or it may be a COVID-19 cases. Okay, so these are all the some of the works which I have been share with you. So to move further, the concluding remarks of my presentations to the audience is that, as the researcher, I am just highlighting some of the key research problem for the audience, maybe for the students. If you like to carry out your research in the medical imaging, or you can use any of the research problem which is highlighted in this slide. And recently, many researchers, they have been working with the diagnosis of COVID-19 images in worldwide, and of course the COVID-19 images is also used for the segmentation of the lungs. Okay, these are all many research reports that has been notified in day by day, couple of more than 100 number of articles. And of course, I can suggest you it's a good time to publish more number of articles in these areas. And apart from this, the retinal image, so that is also one of the very important research problem for the researcher in detection, classification, as well as the segmentation in any type of disease, not only for diabetic retinopathy, but also AMD and the glaucoma and other diseases. Okay, and of course, we can use MRI images for any type of disease detection, classification, segmentation, and the cancer detection as well. And finally, many researchers, they are working with some interdisciplinary research problem with medical image. That is one problem. One research problem is that automatic translation of medical image to text or vice versa. Because once the image is loaded, automatically the machine can suggest the text from the image. So the medical imaging that has been we can do with research with the natural language processing, and of course with the AI technology, artificial intelligence. So this interdisciplinary area is also very important research problem for the researcher, because more research groups are working in this domain. Okay, next, the conclusions, medical image processing is one of the evergreen research area for the researcher, and of course this research can be simplified with the help of the deep learning in computer aided detection and diagnosis, and of course for developing some imaging tools, and of course finally developing a decision support tools. And the future of medical imaging will be almost the researchers are using two-dimensional images, but now almost majority of the researcher, they are using the 3-dimensional and the 4-dimensional images, And of course, I suggest the participants you can concentrate more on the 3D images, and then only so you can able to do some good research in your interested areas. Okay, so with this, I like to share some of other things to the participants. And suppose if you want to work with the retinal image, we have been so many data sets are available in online. So I have been listed here. Almost 10 different data sets are available. These all are free data set. You can directly download the data set and work with any other retinal area research. And next is that if you want to work with some COVID-19 images, so we have a couple of data set also available in online. So you can refer this particular links, you will get it. And of course, for the undergraduate students, I suggesting you the freeware, which is like CVIP tool. So this is the free tool you can download from the internet. So if you want to learn the fundamentals about the image processing, and of course, this tool can help you to understand all the things, because this is like a drag and drop tool. You don't need to download any, you don't need to write any code, single line of program. Automatically, with the help of tool, you can understand the whole image processing concepts. Okay, so these are all the references which have been used for these presentations. So these are also some textbooks, Retina, Fundamentals of Medical Imaging, and of course the evergreen research books in the field of artificial intelligence, pattern recognition, machine learning, and deep learning. Okay, finally, thank you all for your participations, active participations, and of course, and the last, if you want to touch with me, or if you want to carry out any research internships or any PhD fellowships, so we are always welcome, because it's one of the good government institutions in the country. They're always attracting the foreign researchers for admitting the PhD fellowships and also the internship lab opportunities in my lab. So you may feel free to write anything to my mail. So I'm happy to help in any time, or in maybe in any event. Okay. So with this, thank you very much. Thank you all of you for giving me the opportunity for sharing my thoughts over this virtual platform. So especially I thank you, Dr. Jonathan, for your pain, for continuously touching with me in the last almost 4 or 5 months, for these presentations. Thank you very much, and it is open to you. I'm happy to answer any queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murugan. We have a question from the audience, Jin Yuan. I think in the chat he's asking, is there any rule of thumb to develop the CNN model? For example, the process to determine how many convolutional loop, hidden layer, or neural node. Any guidelines or rule of thumb that you can share with this participant?
Can you repeat the question? Actually, I'm not getting.
Oh, he is asking any rule of thumb to develop a CNN model. So he's asking if how to determine the convolutional loops, how many hidden layers should be, how to tune neural nodes. So any rule of thumb that you can share, or
yes. Yeah, now I got the question. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so it's a nice, interesting question. You can see developing a unique architecture, it is one of the challenging tasks, right? Because that's I have been highlighted in the presentation also. So according to the questions, like how many, like a number of convolution and polling and other kind of like layer, how to select it. So basically, so like that we have to do with our own experience, or in other ways we can select, we have to do with our own trial and error. Like say for example, if you are if you see like our the conventional problem that has been carried out for the COVID-19 diagnosis. So what happened initially, I have been working with the normal pre-trained network, like say for example ResNet 50, but the ResNet 50 is not given some good result. Not the classification accuracy is very less. Then what happens is that I have been find out what kind of technique we can able to implement in this ResNet 50 network to improve the accuracy of the network. then what happens is that one idea we can use the optimization technique. So for example, in a CNN network, in any pre-trained network, like the selection of hyperparameter is one of the important problems. Say for example, initial learning rate, momentum, regularization. Now so many like hyperparameters are that we have to be select, right? So for selecting those hyperparameter, normally the researcher, they are doing the manual process, okay, the value. But instead of that, if you are optimizing this value with the help of the optimization algorithm, of course the performance of the network will be better than the original. Okay, so those things that actually we have to do with our own experience, or it may be with our own we have to discuss with our own research group, and of course in the trial and error process we can say there's nothing like secret in this. Okay, then we have to run the architecture with our own data set. So which architecture that will be in the good result, and of course we have to report in the publications or maybe in the report. Okay, so this is the way that all the deep learning researchers are working worldwide. And of course, if you are a student and your faculty advisor or maybe your supervisor, they are the good mentor, that from them you can get a lot of ideas. Okay, how to do that, how to do this kind of which model or architecture we can select, and especially for selection of number of convolution layer and number of pooling layer as well. And of course, in general, if you want some good accuracy, of course you have to use more number of convolutional layer and polling layer in the hidden, then only you will get some optimum classification accuracy in the deep learning.
Okay, I hope that answers the participants' question. Yeah, we also have another question from Kong Ming. Yeah. He posed two questions. So how did you identify the optimized CNN for the abnormality detection for the of the retina fundus image? So you've spoken of using optimization technique. So I think he's asking, how do you identify which optimization? He's manually identifying. So is it by try and error? Okay, so perhaps maybe you can address this question by, what would be your preferred? Is there like a optimization technique that you employ, or is there a famous author or publisher or researcher that you follow in terms of the technique in optimizing? Maybe I rephrase the first question in that way.
Yeah. So that is another interesting question. So here I like to answer this question. So basically, we have been used the optimization algorithm for the training of any deep neural network. So in a common or in the layman, everybody knows based on the hyperparameter selection of the network, so the performance of the network that will be produced, right? But here, instead of that, if you use the optimization algorithm, like say the meta-heuristics optimization algorithm, we have n number of meta-heuristic optimization algorithms, right from the genetic algorithm, pattern search, and and of course the swarm intelligence optimization algorithm, that is also famous, right? So if you use those kind of optimization algorithm, then you have the freedom to optimize or to find out best parameter value, okay, in the training time. Okay, if your training is best, of course your testing accuracy will be very well in the network. Okay, so this is the one point you can see. And the selection of the best optimization algorithm, that is also then another experiment that we have been carried out from the research. Suppose if I am applying the Weyl optimization algorithm for one network, maybe the performance will be poor. If you are applying some other optimization algorithm for the same network, maybe it will be better. Okay, so what we have to do, so we have to do the collection of experiment. So then only we can able to develop, or then only we can able to propose some novel and good architecture for classifying any kind of disease, not only for this fundus like the deep line, like diabetic retinopathy, but also in any kind of diseases. Because the idea of this presentations, I have been highlighted only the generic framework, not for any specific disease. Like, so if you use these particular ideas, definitely you can implement or you can develop your own unique architecture for classifying or diagnosis any kind of diseases.
Thank you, thank you. The next one, I think perhaps we will put this as a last question if there's none from the floor. Kobe is also asking how you do the pre-processing to reduce the noises in the images that you collected. So any methods that you use before you actually use it to train the model?
Yeah, good question. Say this is again comes into the conventional image processing. So basically, I've been highlighted in the general framework. Then I will highlight what pre-processing techniques I have been followed. Say for example, in the fundus camera, while acquiring the image, like there will be a disturbance in the background, or maybe from the patients, or maybe from the operator side. Okay, and what happens is that, so we have been faced a lot of illumination effect from the closed room. Okay, so to address this illumination effect, so basically we have been used the two pre-processing techniques. One is the basic, the masking process, like it is like a mask generation with the background. That is a one pre-processing that I have been used. And second is that I have been used the histogram equalization to improving the contrast of the original image. Okay, once the image contrast has been improved, then of course extracting the feature from the image is quite easy. So these are all the two pre-processing techniques which have been used for my work. Okay, and of course in a generic framework, based on the nature of the image, you have to be identify the correct pre-processing techniques, maybe for removing the noise, or for any other kind of blurring cases, that you have to select the optimum filter. Then only like in that way you can easy to remove those noises from the collected images.
Thank you, Dr. Murugan. Okay, for the other participants, anything else that you would like to know from Dr. Murugan? Okay, once again, thank you so much, Dr. Murugan, for your time. If we have some opening in our future plannings of our colloquium, we really like to have you again. And perhaps if there is room to have you do some training with us in terms of this deep learning and maybe some hands-on to just learn a few tricks, maybe
Sure.
have you run through with us in some open softwares. Okay, we really like to have you again. Okay.
Sure. I can do with that whatever you want. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Now, I believe we want to take some pictures, some screenshot. Perhaps can we just turn on our cameras? This is just for remembrance purposes, filing purposes as well. Okay, we appreciate if all the participants, you can turn on your camera. We take a group photo. Thank you all. Okay. Hang on. Okay, Koming, when it's okay, let me know. Okay, and also for your information, there is a feedback form and also to record your presence here with us. You can refer to the chat box. Would like you to fill up the form that is attached or post in the chat. So take a little of your time to fill it up. Okay. Okay, once again, thank you everyone. Hope you have benefited. So remember not to strain your eyes that much. Don't view your phone while you are in the dark. Okay, and let's practice a healthy screen time during this pandemic. Okay, stay safe everyone. Thank you, Dr. Murugan. Thank you everyone. So we will end our session here. So please refer to Dr. Murugan if you need his assistance on something or you would like to establish any research affiliation, collaboration. Okay, so if you need any further information and you can't get in touch, you can approach me personally or you can approach Kong Ming, who is also one of our postgraduate students who is also helping to take care of this colloquium. Okay, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you
day.
very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay, see you
Bye bye.
everyone. Bye bye bye.
Bye bye everyone.
Hello, sir. I can't see the chat box. May I know where to fill attendance form?
You can't see the chat box. Okay, Kong Ming, can you help email to Sharish? Okay, maybe Sharish, I send it to your inbox, can? I send it to your inbox. Okay, I just see if you get it.